Mark Rodriguez here, and this is I guess, America's second cure for insomnia. It's the fighting podcast where we talk about fighting games and beat 'em ups and new and old, all like. And of course, as always, I am not alone. I'm Mark Rodriguez here, and with me are
William White, aka Ninja Panda, 1980.
Wendy McBride, Ninja Jupi, or Jupi-chan.
And Rikki Roxx, Goddess Thunder, Lord of Rock and Roll, Wrestling Superstar Extraordinaire. Happy to be here once again on the Fighting Podcast. And I'm going to throw it to Mr. Electricity himself. Why don't you introduce yourself, pal?
Johnny Rodriguez here.
That's all he has to say. And I got Scorpion here because, yes, today we're going to be talking about Mortal Kombat 2, all the different versions of it and whatever, and also the not-so-good sequel for the 90s movie, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, and there are nightmares that come with that. I'm going to kind of take a page from Rikki Roxx's book here, and we're going to talk about, how we first got introduced to Mortal Kombat 2. And, I guess for me and Johnny, because, again, we grew up together, we lived together and all that stuff, I got first introduced to it through EGM, mostly EGM, I think. I'm pretty sure GamePro too, but we had a kind of weird thing where I was the GamePro guy and Johnny was the EGM guy, and we kind of collected our whatever. It's, just a thing. We weren't really competing, but whatever. So we got the news and updates.
I got
sequels coming up.
That was the one I got. I always got EGM, but I picked up GamePro once in a while, but yeah. Mm-hmm. I liked EGM better because they had the multi-person reviews. That was my thing.
Yeah. So that's when we got the first news about it. Like the game's coming out and they start using the characters and more than one fatality. The graphics are improved. And the thing I liked the most about the game was that, it was just more exciting to me because this came around the time of Super Street Fighter 2. And for better or for worse, yes, Super Street Fighter 2 did have 4 new characters, 4 new stages. They redid the music. They got different voice actors to do the voices or whatever. But the thing is, it was still Street Fighter 2 with a couple of new guys. Mortal Kombat had a whole new cast. Well, lots of new characters, but all the old characters like Liu Kang and them looked different, all new designs and stuff. Sonya and Kano were missing. It was just more interesting. It was curious. Who are the new guys? The new designs? Where's Sonya and Kano? Who's the new boss? And one thing I also like is that they de-aged Shang Tsung. And when I saw the design, I was, wait a minute. I went to get my old comic book, the comic book I bought based on the first one, because the first pager showed the younger Shang Tsung when he was still killing people whenever he and Goro ran things before he finally lost to Kung Lao. And I was like, oh, damn, it's the same fucking design, So that was fucking awesome for me and everything. I'll go into the actual game later, but right now, the first time we've ever heard of it was, through the magazines and everything.
Well, if I can go, it was okay. For myself, I first came across the game the old-fashioned way. I went to the arcade. And I saw the games, and I was like, oh, it's another Mortal Kombat. I'm going to play. So I paid my mom for quarters, and I went to play. And that's about it. And I had fun. I got my butt kicked because of Mortal Kombat 2. Your butt is supposed to get kicked in Mortal Kombat 2. And I'm sure we're going to get into gameplay later. Oh, my gosh, AI. Yeah. But, that was my first experience. My first introduction of knowing anything. I never was into the gaming magazines or any of that stuff growing up. So not until I was, slightly older, maybe someone at school would have had something, but not me, myself. And I didn't really know too many people with them either.
Yeah, I think my first experience was actually EGM. I remember walking by it in front of in the grocery store, just scrolling through as usual, checking out the comic books, and right next to it, there was an EGM with a cover that said Mortal Kombat 2 with a big question mark on it. So went ahead and popped it open. That was the first time I ever seen the actual graphics of it. They actually had a couple of behind the scenes pictures of the actors, being digitized for their moves and everything of that nature. So yeah, that was my first go at Mortal Kombat. That was my first time ever seeing it as far as Mortal Kombat 2.
For me, I think, it's hard for me to remember if I actually played it in the arcade or whether the first time I played it was the Super Nintendo version, which is what's behind me here. Because I grew up in a little town called Jamesburg in New Jersey, and there wasn't really a big arcade near us. There was only one place close by where people went to play arcade games. There was a little arcade in Brunswick Square Mall on Route 18, and it wasn't a big place. They had a lot of stuff, but it wasn't a place where you were going to find more than one of anything. The Mortal Kombat games and the Street Fighter games, they were so popular that a lot of the arcades, they had multiple cabinets to accommodate all the demand. But this place wasn't like that. You know, if they got, for example, you know, if a sequel game came out, they didn't have room to keep the old one, so they'd shit can the old one and just have the new one. That's what would have happened with Mortal Kombat. When 2 came out, they would have gotten rid of the old one, had the new one out. So I know I played one or the other in the arcade a couple times. I would be surprised if I didn't play Mortal Kombat 2 even once. But if I did ever play it in the arcade, it would have been maybe once or twice. Definitely wouldn't have been very good at it at all, but I would have liked to play it just for the spectacle of it, because I used to do that. There was a ton of arcade games. Like, you remember, you weren't great at everything you tried, but you had like an extra 50 cents in your pocket. And you're like, oh, this looks cool. Let me try this. And maybe you only got 30 seconds out of it, which would be a bummer. But still, it was something you tried, and then you'd be like, okay, that was fun. And you move on to the next thing. I miss that, by the way. I really miss the arcade experience, but it's gone, and that's what it is. But one of the things that revived it was the Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat craze in the early 90s, because people had already drifted from the arcades for a few years. But now, thanks to these fighting games, they were bringing everybody back. Sometimes there'd be a line. I mean, you know, even at these smaller arcades, like the one at the mall, there would be a crowd or a line and people putting their quarter up for next and all that cool shit. But that was another reason why, like, even if I wanted to play Mortal Kombat 2, I wouldn't have been able to get near it that often anyway. I remember watching people play it. That I do remember. I probably played it like twice. I definitely remember seeing people play it. But my first firm memories are of the Super Nintendo version. And I hadn't really gotten into reading the magazines yet, more than occasionally. I remember TV commercials, but I remember my buddy, the same buddy whose house I used to play the Genesis MK1, they got Mortal Kombat 2 for the Super Nintendo. So I was like, oh, this is neat. So I messed with that. And I was able to beat it a little bit easier, I think, than the first game. But I remember only really having a hard time with Shao Kahn. He was a bitch. But yeah, I remember playing it there over sleepovers and things like that and having fun with it. So that's my experience. I probably encountered it in the wild, so to speak, but I remember as soon as it came out for Super Nintendo, I played it very shortly after, a good bit. Not obsessively, but yeah, that's where I pretty much broke in on that.
Mm.
Yeah, my situation, I didn't even remember about the whole magazine situation, but yeah, I'm pretty sure, especially back then, what was it, Play, GamePro and EGM, they were like the most popular video game magazines, so I would assume, yeah, that would be the way we would find out about all the newer games like Mortal Kombat 2. I don't remember playing it too much in the arcades either. I think we actually played it much more when it became, like the home console version, like the SNES version. I don't remember, like, the arcade game, like, you still kind of see it in the background if you go to, I don't know, certain locations that have the game available, but I don't remember, like, us playing it that much in the arcades. I'm not mistaken.
Well, I do want to add, though, Johnny, like, I think we didn't get to see it so soon because by the time it got to us, it was like, what do you call it? It was like the time where they had like the SNES rigged to the arcade so that you could play for a certain time, and it's kind of rigged that either if you play for too long or if you die, you got to put another, I don't know, 100 pesos coin in there. We were still Mexico, And so, yeah, so we mostly played SNES version at the time, and we only got to see the real arcade with the bigger graphics and the intro, because SNES skipped the big intro that had like the images of of Shang Tsung facing execution and stuff like that. Like those images were not in I think the Super Nintendo is just the Mortal Kombat 2 title, and that's it.
Coming up behind me right now. This is what you got. You can see it vaguely. You just got the flashing logo with the lightning behind it. That's what you get.
Yeah. So, I think, like you said, Johnny, when we went to like the bigger cities, Mortal Kombat 2 was there, but it was in the background. We were doing other things, no time to really stop and put a quarter in there or whatever. But yeah, in the arcade, we mostly saw it like the SNES game, you know. But someone, I forgot who, some kid in school let us borrow the Genesis version, which is how we played it the most before we finally just bought the SNES version. And
I can't wait to talk about all the different versions too. That's going to be fun because, you know, that's with these games, just like the last time when we did the MK1, you know, they all have a lot of things different about them. And, you know, they make them all stand out for better or worse. And for me, that was always one of the coolest things as a kid. I mean, it wasn't cool if you got one of the lesser versions of one of these games, but at the same time, it was like, you know, it was having a bit of a unique experience depending on which console you played a game on is something that, you know, it was charming. It was just a charm to it.
Yeah. So
oh, sorry. I was going to add on how you guys were introduced to how you played it and whatever. I was saying like I said, my first exposure to it was like, as I mentioned, the arcade. But I didn't get to play all the time, as you know, like Rikki was just saying, like it was difficult because, you know, it was a popular game, but, you know, always a lot of people, you know, they're trying to play it. So, you know, I did watch a lot, but, you know, whenever I got the chance to play, that was nice. And also back then at the mall that we used to go to, my dad was friends with the guy that ran the actual arcade part of the mall. So I kind of got dibs sometimes.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I used to get like the free. Huh?
Just to go real quick through the plot of Mortal Kombat 2, which is kind of interesting because that's where it started to cement a lot more. Because the first game's plot was basically, you know, big martial arts tournament to the death or whatever. But like a lot of
real quick
Yeah.
before speaking of the first game, since I happen to have it here this time, since we're on camera this time, which we were not for the MK1 podcast, but I talked about it, so just wanted to show it off real quick. This was the strategy guide for the first game that I had gotten from a friend of mine named Dan, and this was something GamePro packed into one of their issues, and like I said, I remember flipping through this, even though I didn't even have the game, but it was just so cool. It's ripped up to hell, but, you know, I still have it after all these years, and I just remember looking at the artwork and, you know, reading about the characters, and that made me kind of a fan of the series, even though at the time I hardly played the games at all. I barely touched them. You know, this is just some stuff, you know, like Sub-Zero. They don't even really tell you a whole bunch. It's just a neat thing to have, you know. It's just like this little time. I miss stuff like this. Every issue of magazines back then used to have something like this. For a game, they would have some kind of like little strategy guide or concept art book or, you know, cheat code packet or whatever. Like this was the kind of stuff you look forward to. You know, I loved that. I missed that. Now everything's on the fucking internet, which is convenient, but like I said, to still be able to hold something like this and flip through it today, like I get more kicks out of that than looking at the same pictures on the screen. I don't know.
It's not.
Oh, can
it's not tangible.
what, Johnny?
I didn't want to interrupt, but yeah, can I also add, Rikki Roxx, that, you know, it's cool to have the magazines to actually, you know, to read and all that kind of stuff, but just the artwork itself is like, it looks pretty badass. Like I would just, like, it's just magical. Like you don't have stuff like that anymore. Everything's on the internet, for better or worse. And of course, the internet, you can also replicate that. You could, you know, put the artwork on it, but it's just different. It's different watching it on the, especially I'm on the phone right now, just reading it on the phone compared to actually having a actual book where you flip your pages. And yeah, I sound like an old fart right now saying all this.
Now, it's like flipping through a photo album versus scrolling through the same pictures on your hard drive. It just doesn't hit the same. But I'll say real quick what a nut I am and how old school. I'm the icon of old school. Like I'm always telling everybody, you know, how old school I am. I still have all my Game Pros, Electronic Gaming Monthlies, Game Informers. I have all of that. It's in my spare room. I have it all in a library on bookshelves. I have them all encased in binders, every issue, going back to probably 1991. I don't have every issue released, but just all the ones I have. So yeah, I got a couple shelves full of these big binders full of all my old magazines, and it's cool to just like flip through them, and even just looking at the covers is like a time capsule. It really is. But then actually flipping them open and reading about the games at the time they came out, like reading about Mortal Kombat 2 and what people were saying when it was fresh and hot. It's a great experience. It's cool. It's not just, it's nostalgic, it's educational, it's informative. I mean, yes, you can get the same information on the internet, but I mean, I don't know if kids today really will ever know the feeling of, buying one of those magazines to get those cheat codes or that artwork and those photos and those screenshots. It was like every month was like an event. Like this was a big deal when this stuff happened back then, I don't think you can really replicate it now, but that's what the times were like back when Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 came out, man. It's part of why we remember those times so much, is because we had those experiences. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And like you were saying, I mean, it's just nice to have something tangible, something you can hold on to, And I really agree with that. I mean, I kind of miss that. I wish I would have kept a lot of my older things, but I lost a lot of stuff because we had a flood in the mid-90s and then another one in the early 2000s. And yeah.
It takes up a ton of space. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm a lunatic, having this much stuff. But I have a lot of my wrestling magazines, same thing. I got a library for them too. And I have even more of those than I do the game mags. But, it's just, some people like us, we get it. We're, we understand what it means to look back at that. Like the covers, when a new Mortal Kombat game would come out, the covers they would come out with for those magazines to show off the game, like, oh man, that was like an adventure. Just seeing those things was like, wow, man.
Because you remember, guys, for those listening, we're on Samsung Podcast or Amazon Podcast and Spotify. If you want to see the video version, because, some of you guys are listening to Rikki Roxx talking about holding a magazine. You're like, what? Be sure to check out Odyssey for the video version of this podcast. You can see like the full picture and everything. You know what I mean? Especially Johnny. Johnny got super dolled up and super fancy, haircut, the sideburns, epic
I'm going
jacket.
to change my picture after the podcast. But anyways, the thing I like about the whole magazine thing, just in general, is that it's also like, I don't know, like the internet is good, but the bad thing is like all this kind of like, for example, like the Mortal Kombat magazine you had, if it was done nowadays, it would be on the internet and it would be for free. So it's like the people putting all that information, I mean, I guess they're still getting paid for it because they're still doing all that publishing and all that kind of stuff. But it's just, I don't know, it's just like a whole different ballpark. I feel like in the old days, it was a little bit more like straightforward. Like you go to the store, you buy the magazine, and then, I'm sure a portion of that money or however that shit works goes to the Game Pro company or whatever the, book publishing company it is that publish all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I just feel like it's just different nowadays. Like I actually, yeah.
I feel like more effort was put into all of those too back then. And same with gaming manuals. It's just fun they put a lot more effort into them.
Oh yeah. Well, like Mark was saying, and we'll come back to what he was saying with this, is how with Mortal Kombat 2, that was kind of where more of the lore was becoming established. And that actually was where a lot of these magazines and comic books and secondary media began to really become important, because that's where you got even more of the story. The game told you a little, the manual told you a little, but to really dig into it and get the characters' full backstories and how they connected and everything, that started to become more prominent with Mortal Kombat 2 and other games that came out at the same time. But yeah, like that was part of it. You'd buy the magazines, you'd buy the comic books, you'd do that stuff to kind of do research and figure out what the heck's going on, because I mean, there's plot to this game, to Mortal Kombat 2. So Mark, that's what you were getting at.
There's a lot of plot.
Yeah, I'm just going to go through the basics and you guys can kind of fill in the dots for some of the other characters. But right off the bat, the big plot for Mortal Kombat 2, it does establish more of what's going on, because again, the first one was just a death tournament and pretty much it, unless you bought the comic book or whatever, or the free comic book because it was free, right? Just ship $1 and you get it, But anyways, the plot is basically that Shang Tsung was going to face execution at the hands of Shang Tsung and then for failing, because they were supposed to get the tournament. They lost and all that stuff after the defeat to the hands of Liu Kang, which is the Mortal Kombat champion, where Shang Tsung came up with the idea that, hey, hold on, let's make a second tournament, but this time the tournament's going to be an Outworld, so that way it don't matter if we lose or they win or whatever, we'll still kill them all anyway. They're stuck in Outworld. So Shao Kahn was like, oh, yeah, there you go. That's an idea. And for that, they de-aged Shang Tsung. Like, I guess, I'm not sure if Shao Kahn was the one who was aging them to begin with, but he de-aged them to help them, with their mission. On other minor things, in the first game, Scorpion did kill Sub-Zero. So the Sub-Zero we see here is now his younger brother. And apparently, since Sub-Zero was sent to kill Shang Tsung in the first game, his brother's now going to finish the job because it's like, wait, he's still alive? What the fuck? So he went there to finish him off. Scorpion finds out, again, Sub-Zero, what the fuck? Still alive? So he goes over there again. Then Jax went in there because somewhere after the first tournament, I guess not everyone made it back home all right, because Sonya and Kano were captured. And I'm not sure, I think they were not official tournament people in the first game. Kano escaped on the big Shang Tsung rotten ship thing, and Sonya chased after him. They were both captured. They were both forced to be in the tournament. Somehow they survived the first tournament, so now they're just captured. So now Jax is going to the tournament to find out what happened to Sonya and to capture Kano. And Katana's in the game, and Melina's an evil clone created by Shang Tsung's sorcery. And the most important, the biggest part of the lore is that this one finally established officially in the game, not just the movies or whatever, that Raiden is like the Earthrealm protector, and that he is in charge of watching over Liu Kang, Sonya, I guess in this case, Jax and all of them. And he's not just like the random guy from the first game that if you beat the game with him, he just thinks like a tournament of the gods until the world itself is destroyed. Have a nice day. That was a funny ending. But he wasn't. Now here he's like the wise, and he's Earthrealm defender and giving advice and all that stuff. Like Mortal Kombat's not about death, but about life, and all that stuff. So that does help a lot in establishing the lore. And you guys can go into other little lore tidbits and details. I'm sure there's a lot of it that you guys know with some of the other characters.
Well, I guess Panda probably would know a lot more than I do because, again, I started really paying attention to the plot a little bit later on. I followed along with it, but then, I got really into it with Deadly Alliance was where I started really paying attention. So at this point, I was still kind of casual about it. I'm still kind of casual about it, but I was really casual back then. So I think Panda would probably be able to fill in any of the gaps that remain on that. But, yeah, there's a lot of plot in the series, and it really started rolling with this game.
Actually, I really don't have too much to say. Like, Mark actually hit everything on the head. There's just a couple of oddball things that weren't story related that happened with the arcade machines that are pretty interesting, but I can get into those later, or we could talk about those now.
Oh, we could go now, but I just want to say real quick, Reptile was the hidden character in the first game. So now it was cool that Reptile was a legit character in this game. And to kind of follow the trend, they had the hidden character Jade and Smoke, which would, of course, become playable characters in later games. So that was kind of cool to kind of keep that. And Kung Lao is, of course, a descendant of the first Kung Lao, which, again, made me look at the comic book. I was, wait a minute. That name sounds familiar. I have to, go find that comic book because who knows where it was after like a year or so, right? And I'm like, shit, it's the same guy. Oh, my God. And I'm flipping out, nerdy, what do you call it? Canon type person I am, because I'm always like very into canon stuff. I hate, you know what I mean? Like, don't make 10 games and then all of a sudden you say now Liu Kang is Kung Lao's brother. I'm gonna be like, no, they weren't. I'll be that one guy to be like, no, they weren't. That kind of shit, And
that's how I feel about the Koopa kids and Koopa.
Yeah.
Oh, they're not their kids. Sorry, my Super Mario Bros. 3 manual said otherwise.
Yeah. And Katana was the princess of Outworld, but she was a good guy. Like she's, I guess we didn't know at the time she was adopted daughter, just daughter of Shao Kahn, but we didn't know that, but she was actually a good guy. And Melina was sent to secretly kill her and take her place and everything. And I think Baraka was just introduced just as an extra bad guy, or to kind of give an example of, the weird creatures she'll face in Outworld and shit like that. And finally, Kintaro replaces Goro because Goro died.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how they bring him back in other games, but as of right now, he was dead. Like the intro even says, after the defeat of Shang Tsung at the hands of Liu Kang and the apparent death of Goro, Shang Tsung was going to face execution. So at this point in time, he was dead before they, turn around and said like, well, maybe not. And I don't know, Johnny Cage was just in there to help out or something. Like it wasn't, like the first game that's just there to show off he can actually fight. I think the second one he was just there to kind of help out or make more movies or some shit. I forgot his particular.
Oh, wait a minute. See, it's like I'm remembering his second game's ending, but I'm not having a hard time remembering his first games. No, unless I'm mixing it up, because I think they made they made a movie about Mortal Kombat starring him or something.
Yeah, that was the first one.
That was the first game, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think the second ending was the one that began his the Ninja Mime series that they keep joking about throughout the game.
Oh man.
Oh,
okay, I was mixing them up though. It's been a while.
And weird funny fact and evidence, Johnny Cage's costume in the second game is legitly the first player costume that you see in the other Midway game, Smash TV, which there's a background story to where he originally got his fame by winning the Smash TV tournament. So yeah, that's actually his Smash TV outfit in the second game.
Oh wow.
I love when they do.
So after fighting the giant robot baby thing, I mean, Outworld should be nothing. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you figure a four-armed, tiger guy would be nothing after fighting, the giant baby head announcer with the Marduk body.
Yeah. So, everyone, favorite characters that you all remembered using and playing as and everything?
Well, I always used Sub-Zero in all the games. That was my main thing. I mean, I'm boring when it comes to that. In the newer games where there's like rewards for playing as all the different characters, I make it a point to play as everybody at least a little bit, to go through their story and everything like that and get their unlockables and get the achievements. That's a big thing. Like, I love achievements. Everybody's torn on them, but I love them because they make me play games more than I would and do things I wouldn't normally do just to get that little, hit of euphoria from the achievement icon popping up. So back in those days, I pretty much just found a character I was good with and stayed with that. So that's how I rolled back then. And so, yeah, just like in tournament fighters, I always mostly played Leo. I'm always Sub-Zero in all the Mortal Kombat games. But one thing annoyed me about this game, though, even though I understand it for storyline purposes, but right away I was annoyed that they took out Sonya and Kano just because, I love having new characters in, but I always hate losing characters because it always makes a game feel less complete to me. So it was cool that they at least had them involved, even though they're just chained up in the background. But I mean, especially as a man of culture, I always was, kind of a fan of Sonya. And, I mean, I will say the second game, they had more female characters than just one, which is cool. But by losing one, that also kind of subtracts from that in a way. And then, Kitana and Melina basically being so similar visually, that's kind of, it almost feels like a loss. You gained 3 yards, but you lost 1 in a sense. So, but yeah, I mean, I got over it, of course, but I was happy when those characters got brought back in later games. And I'm just a huge mark for the newer type games where they just try to cram everybody in there. Because I hate that in games. I understand why they do it sometimes with these things, but like, it's like with the Soul Calibur 5 when they took out Sophia, I know she's dead, but like, how are you not going to play as her? Come on, man. It's like, she's got to be in there. Yeah. So yeah, that was my thing.
I kind of like, they took out, Sonya and Kano, but I kind of, like you said, I kind of like how they used them. Since, based on, because story-wise, it definitely worked. But I also heard that the reason that they took those two out was because, the data from the arcade cabinets, they were the two least played characters or chosen characters, so that's why they took them out.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that.
I mean, I don't know if this is completely true, so I turn it over to the Panda.
That actually is kind of true. Basically, all the arcade machines have a certain boot up. And once they boot up, it shows the amount of time the machine's been played in total, what character's been used the most, what character's been used the least, even right down to how many times a secret has been unlocked. And it was shown that, yes, both Kano and Sonya had the least runtime out of anyone on the MK roster. So that's why instead of just they didn't throw them on the scrapping room floor, we're going to try to find a way to fix them later. But for now, they just kind of had them chained off into the background.
I'll say real quick, though, based on the gameplay style, one of my favorite characters besides, obviously Sub-Zero, Scorpion, whatever, was Melina. I liked her play style. Mortal Kombat 2, we could go deeper into the mechanics. They introduced the juggle combos where you could basically knock people in the air and keep them up there as long as you can before they fall back down. Yeah. So with the game being so tough to play with the AI and everything, because Mortal Kombat plays in a different style. It doesn't play like Street Fighter, you know what I mean? So with Melina having the teleport, the roll attack, and the size, I think you have to hold a button and then it goes. She just throws ice size at you. I did like juggling between the ball attack and the teleport or something. I forgot which order it was. I think it was teleport first and then hit him with the ball before they land after you knock him with the teleport and stuff like that. And her vitality was pretty easy. I forgot how to do, I think once she guts you, I think it was just forward, back, forward or something with the button. But the other one was kind of hold the button and get within distance, then let the button go, and she'll suck the person in and throw the bones out. So at least for me, for gameplay wise, she was the easiest person to play with, the easiest person to do combos with, and the easiest person to do the fatalities without me having to, because that was annoying though. The fatalities had more steps in this one compared to the first one. They were 2 each and all that. I always had to grab the instruction manual or the Game Pro Mag to read them. I used Melina. They're easy to remember, so I used her the most. At least gameplay-wise, I used her the most. And probably Liu Kang too,
I don't think I ever successfully did a fatality in that game to this day. And even doing research trying to get caught up again for the show, I played it for a while, and it's just okay, first of all, I get that it's a arcade port, but, not having a pause button for a game like this is brutal. Because, as you said, especially the fatalities, they have multiple steps to them now. Yeah. Some of them do. So, unless you really have the inputs committed to memory, which I don't even see how you get that far with some of these. But because I would try. I was trying to think why, even though as a kid, I had magazines with all the input codes, this is how you do this special move, this is how you do this fatality. But I always really had a hard time with them, and I still do. And they're a little bit more complicated, I think, than they ought to be, especially since you can't pause the home versions and look at your cheat sheet. You really got to know. But what was happening to me was I'd look at my phone or whatever before I'd play a match. I'm okay, Sub-Zero's fatality is this. And I'd memorize it. Then I start the match, and then I'm so busy trying to not lose that by the time it says finish him, I can't remember what I just committed to memory, and I don't have time to look at it again because I can't pause the damn game. So to this
Mercy!
I don't think I've ever, in Mortal Kombat 2, I've actually done them in the first game, but I don't think in Mortal Kombat 2, I don't think I've ever successfully done a single fatality, not even having the list right in front of me. In the newer ones, you can pause it, so it's no problem. I've done it a million times. Back then, oh, man.
He had to have it written all down, or maybe somebody who knew how to do certain fatalities. They would tell you go home and try them, that type of thing. For a person like me who didn't have magazines and stuff, so
Sub-Zero had a 2-step fatality, man. He had the step where the first one he freezes you super solid. and then you got to do another motion to bust you into bloody ice cubes. Like, what the fuck? Well, the thing is, the bad news for you, Rikki Roxx, is that the SNES version actually gave you, I don't know if it's exactly twice as long, but at least a few extra seconds compared to the arcade. So in the arcade, it's even a shorter window for you to do them when it says finish him, or they'll just drop dead.
I like how they've gotten more forgiving with that over the years. I mean, that's the thing. I've talked many times about how the newer fighting games across the board, Soul Calibur, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, all the fighting games nowadays are a lot more user-friendly. Like, they were always more of a niche thing to begin with. I understand that. But at the same time, there was somebody like me who tries to play and appreciate all kinds of games. RPGs, fighting, racing. I have the stuff I'm mostly into, but I try to play a little of everything. So, even though I'm not the fighting game guy, if there's a game where I could pick up and play it and do well at it, I'm going to be a lot more accommodating to it. Some of these older fighting games, even though they have their charm and whatever, and we remember them for a lot of good reasons, and some of them are rough, and I really going back to them. And we'll talk a little bit about that with regard to this game, because it's cool, but it's also very, very flawed. It's a very flawed game. I just have to come out and say it. But, there's reasons why we have good memories of it. But, oh, man, playing them now makes me appreciate the new stuff so much more. Like, I played the Mortal Kombat reboot and 10, like, a couple of months ago. Like, late last year, I think I played them, and I had a blast. But, oh, man, I appreciate the new ones so much more now after playing this game again. That's all I can say.
Yeah. What do you want to say before everyone else goes with their characters? Back, not now, because nowadays I haven't played the game in a while, but back in the day, obviously we're playing it day in, day out. It's the new game, we're playing it like all day and all that kind of junk. The only fatality I've never been able to do was Kung Lao's one where he throws the hat to cut off your head, because again, it's a two-step fatality. First, you got to do whatever the fuck to throw the thing. Then you have to fucking steer the hat, and he throws it so quick. It's impossible. Like, for me, I always overshoot it. It's like, dude, just make it a one-step thing and have him automatically, slice the guy's head off. Why you got to fucking steer the hat? You know what I mean? Like, that was annoying. That was the only one I could never, ever, ever do. I could do the first part, but I just can't, because it's so quick. Like, if the dude at least did a little bit of a wind-up or something, but he just, throws it and...
As relates to what we're saying about even having favorite characters in the first place, back in those days, everybody plays differently, so everybody kind of had to find a character that worked well for them, because maybe you were good at Katana, but maybe you weren't good as Scorpion, so you lean towards one. Whereas in the newer games, I still always play as Sub-Zero for the first bunch, and I have, my order of favorites, but, with the newer ones, I can actually do well and pull off everybody's special moves, everybody's fatalities. It's like, it doesn't feel like anybody's fighting me. And I'm not even good at these games for the most part. So, like I said, it kind of gets the relation to what we're saying, is how back then, part of why we had a favorite character is because, you really had to adjust to the game, whereas now it's just pretty much, okay, whoever you like, because you could pretty much do good as anybody. And I just appreciate that so much. But, it was a different world back then. You had to make do with what they gave you.
Yeah.
I don't think I had a favorite character from Mortal Kombat 2. I mean, I like Kung Lao because it was Kung Lao, and I just like Kung Lao because he was Kung Lao, and I thought he was cute. That's the only reason. I thought he was cute, and I liked the hat thing. I thought the hat thing was cool. That's about it, really. No strategy, no nothing. I just wanted to learn how to play with Kung Lao.
Women of culture.
Lady of culture. Got to get it right.
Panda, who did you mostly rock with in that game?
My main two in MK2 were, of course, Scorpion, and which actually is kind of ironic, because you have Scorpion who, tries to play the close game. He uses the rope and spear to get you closer to him so you can go in and attack. But then my other favorite, oddly enough, was Kung Lao, because he was good at the distance game, because he would always throw the hat, and I guarantee you if it was from one side of the room, he was going to catch you on the other side. There was no shortage on that one. So if you wanted to play the distance game and just play a lot of keep away, that's the perfect guy to use. If he gets too close, things get too ugly, you could kind of teleport, start all over again.
Yes,
So
yes.
that was my favorite guy. Not to mention, to me personally, I think overall he probably had the best character design out of anybody in Mortal Kombat 2. That's what really drew me to him.
See, there you go. See,
You know,
I
because
just thought he looked cool. I thought he was cute. I thought he looked cool. I liked his hat. And even if for me with RPGs, I always like things that are range and distance. He was easy to do that with because I'm a wimp. So yes, I like that. About
that and the hat completely sold me because it was like a mixture between Odd Job from James Bond and one of my favorite kung fu movies, The Flying Guillotine. So I was just like, oh, he's got a guillotine hat. Sold, quarter. That was pretty much it right there.
What about you, Johnny?
Okay, well, I gotta say that I think Cao Lao had a little fascist statement thing going on even back then with the hat thing, because there's just something about the hat. But, in all seriousness, besides all the swagger with his hat, I don't really have like a favorite character. I don't think I was never really that good in especially Mortal Kombat 2, because they did raise the difficulty level a lot more, and their fatalities are nearly impossible to do for most of the characters. But so for the most part, I would say from what I remember, pretty much the basic Scorpion and Sub-Zero for the most part.
Yeah. Just real quick.
I did enjoy how the game has like all the cooler juggle combos, and the game seemed to play a lot faster compared to Mortal Kombat 1. But yeah, other than that, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't consider myself to be a excellent, Mortal Kombat expert and knows how to play the game and do all these crazy juggle combos and be able to pull off all these, weird ass fatalities, even with the Game Pro magazine right in front of me. It's like I would still have a hard time trying to do these fatalities. It is what it is.
You and me are exactly alike on that. I go a step further. I come right out and say, and I'll say it again after having played it a little bit yesterday, like I'm terrible at this game. Like I'm just flat out not good at Mortal Kombat 2. It's got style for days, it's a very flashy, memorable game, and I know that there's people who are really great at it, and I'm just not one of them. It is.
I forgot to add. I mean, a character that I don't really play, but a character that I think looks cool, that I like visually, would be Baraka.
Yeah,
I love. I forgot that move that he does, that he slices people with the claws. That shit looked badass.
The series has some of the best character designs. I mean, that has to be said across the board. And we talked about it in the first game too. It's like the style that this series presents itself with, and the character designs. I mean, these are memorable characters. Like you see a character like Baraka, and you say, what's the deal with this guy? Because you'll see, like, okay, you got a ninja, an identical ninja of a different color, dude with sunglasses, special forces looking chick, whatever. And then all of a sudden you got this dude with like gigantic fangs and friggin' claws. Okay, so what's the deal with this? And it makes you ask questions, and it makes you get involved. And that's cool. I like that. I mean, that's definitely got to be one of the strengths of the series is the character designs. Absolutely.
I have a question. I don't know if you guys would have gotten into this for the MK1 discussion, but do you feel that with the direction that they did the game, using the digitized characters and all of that, do you think that affected how up the gaming industry was in a general sense, where it seemed to be more, the gaming industry seemed to become more focused on graphics as a design like that, as opposed to just gameplay?
We definitely touched on that, yeah. We did a whole thing about it. I asked which people liked better, the animated sprites or the digitized sprites. Yeah, we definitely touched on that when we talked about the first game, because it was becoming a trend. You had the Saturn, the Sega CD, and the CGI, the CDI
Yeah.
kind of doing the full motion video games, the really cheesy stuff. It just seemed like the direction things were going in at that time. And, it definitely worked for Mortal Kombat. Better than it did for some of the others. But yeah, that's one of the things we went into.
Yeah. And like I said, it was kind of cool because back then Street Fighter was the first, big popular one. So everything was a Street Fighter copycat. Mortal Kombat was the first one to like do its own thing, not exactly be a Street Fighter copycat, but inspire copycats of its own. So that was kind of interesting. You know what I mean?
We talked about one thing I just
Crappy Way of the Warrior and all those stupid games because Kasumi Ninja, I guess Time Killers in the
Kasumi Ninja, that's what I was thinking of. Fire Crotch. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Okay, never mind.
We were talking about Kung Lao. I just remember we were talking about first impressions. When I heard Kung Lao, I just remember thinking it was kind of like weird. Like they just took Liu Kang and turned his name inside out. Liu Kang, Kung Lao. It's like, it just felt like that. I can't lie. My impression was that it was like the last day. And they're like, well, we still got to like put some names on these characters. And it's like, okay, what about, all right, we'll turn this guy inside out. Now he's Liu Kang. Rolling it. He's a cool character, though.
But I do want to say real quick, though, funny story was the Halloween of that year, whenever we had Mortal Kombat SNES version, we were invited, my brother and I, to like this school Halloween party dance thing or whatever. And yeah, so for the costumes, that was our first ever cosplay. I went as Kung Lao and Johnny went as Johnny Cage, as Liu Kang. And yeah, my parents were nice enough to sew up and tear up some clothes whatever to make it look like our outfit was. We bought some red fabric and I drew the Japanese symbols, whatever the hell they stood for. I drew them and we cut them out and, my mom sewed them on there. Because, hey, we were little kids back then, We made the Mortal Kombat dragon for, like, the belt for Johnny. Johnny had a wife beater shirt. He wasn't going to be walking around with no shirt, make all the girls faint or whatever. Had the red bandana. We sewed, like, the red. He had, like, black baggy pants, so he just sewed my mom sewed the red stripe on the sides. And we made the hat out of black construction paper with aluminum foil around the edges to give it that, the sharp look on it and everything. And that was just so much fun. We were both like just dressed like Mortal Kombat characters of a game that not many non-gamers knew. They probably thought we were like, from some martial arts movie or some shit. And I really wish it was so long ago. This was like early 90s, man. Like, I don't know. If we even have a photo of that anywhere, it's gonna probably be in crappy condition with old cameras and probably dark because the party was at night. So, like had we had some, foresight, it's like, dude, take like about 20 pictures of that and preserve it for posterity.
That's like the time. It reminds me of in '95 when I was the Zodiac for Halloween, the Dungeon of Doom. Thank God, no pictures of that exist.
No God.
I was
going to say, I still use a digital that a friend of mine on Facebook one time dug up like their old graduation pics and they post them up and, we graduated the same year. So I happened to be in the background and I could tell by the picture quality that it was kind of fuzzy. It was kind of like the dude just held up his phone and take a picture of the picture to post online and whatever. So I'm kind of thinking like, I forgot. I'm thinking, dude, why take a picture of the photo? Why not just like upload the original digital photo? I'm like, oh wait, that was like before digital. That was, regular film and Kodak film. It reminds me of a friend of mine, a friend of ours, Rikki Roxx. You happen to know who I'm speaking about in other platforms. That was said that it's so, wait, hold on, Johnny. That it's so wild that back then you had to grab a camera, take a couple of pictures, having zero idea how they would come out until you take them to some place and then wait a week or so to develop them and find out, how they came out. And I think you know who I'm talking about, Mr. Always talking about time and how many years and imagine, yeah. We'll call him the enlightened one.
I wonder if he still does Pokemon fictions.
Yeah, I think if you're listening, buddy, we love you, buddy. We love you, buddy. Just in case you're listening, I doubt you will because we're not talking about Ninja Turtles or anything, but we love you, buddy. What were you saying, Johnny?
Oh, but what's really crazy is that back in the day, the Polaroid camera was basically like what people do now with the Instagram.
Yeah, but the bad thing though with Polaroids is that
Like that
the
was
whole
the
thing.
brand.
Well, first of all, Polaroids were more expensive than regular film, and regular film in itself, with the expense and the hassle, it's like the only time you take a picture is for, big events, parties, birthdays, Uncle Joe, whatever, came to visit or some shit, like that.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's like anything. Oh, I'm eating food. Let me take a picture. Oh, my bedhead hair looks kind of cool today. Let me take a selfie. They have a fucking song that's like, but first, let me take a selfie, like.
If your mom or dad came home and found out you wasted a whole roll of film while they were gone,
Oh, that's a whooping.
Oh yeah.
That's a whooping.
No. I say it right. You gotta say it right. You gotta say it right. That's paddling.
That's a paddling. Waste a whole roll of film. That's a paddling. Because yeah, dude, that was expensive. And you know what's messed up? I was doing some house cleaning recently, and I found a whole box full of, this would have been from like 2001 or 2, but it's got some old disposable cameras and a bunch of used rolls of film in there. And it's like, wow. And I have no idea what's on it, and I have no idea what to do with it. Because I'm sure there's some place I can go to get it developed, but it's much more of a specialized skill. You can't just drop it off at Walgreens.
Probably Walmart or Walgreens still got places that develop or something.
I don't know if they still do that, because I know that they probably still, they do it for the passport pictures and stuff like that.
I'm sure there's ways.
For your IDs or whatever, but I don't know if they still do the whole, oh, let me send this camera film thingy, and they could,
I got like 3 disposable cameras, and it's probably like
I don't know, man. You might find old photos of Sunny in there or something. Those things are probably better left untouched.
I didn't meet her in 2008. I didn't meet her until way then. That was years after. These would have been from like 2001 or 2.
Hey, I was gonna say something earlier when Rikki Roxx was talking about how he thought Kung Lao was like Liu Kang's name, like Inside Out, what I thought was hilarious. When we were younger, because we didn't know how to read Asian names, my cousins and I with Shang Tsung, we actually used to call him Shang Tsung. And that just sounds so silly, but my cousin's friend, I don't know how he did it, but he used to call Shang Tsung Shang Tusk. I just don't know how he did it. They were elementary. I was like going into middle school, but that's beside the point. Shang Tsung, Shang Tusk.
Now here's a question, Wendy, because I know like lived in Japan for a while and all that. You actually know how to write it too, right? Not just talk it, like speak it. You also like for example, when you see these characters in, King of Fighters and Street Fighter and all them, or in this case, Kung Lao with his Japanese, they're Japanese.
Chinese characters?
Yeah.
Chinese characters. Wait, what about it?
Yeah, because they're from the, is that still part of the lore that Liu Kang and Kung Lao are part of the White Lotus Society, like their monk thing? Is that still part of the lore?
That's what I thought. Aren't they?
Yeah, that's actually still part of the lore.
Okay.
I mean, with all the changes over the years, I can't keep.
Yeah, I know. It's been a long time since I ever heard that mentioned in like any of the newer games or something. Because like fucking when you see like those little pre-fight intros, fucking Sub-Zero and Scorpion cannot shut the fuck up about either their real names or their clan. Every other line is like, yes, you can't defeat the Shirai Ryu and whatever, and yes, Bihan, you will die. Yes, what like. Now
and for me, I'm like, you know what? Screw it. You're Sub-Zero, you're Scorpion. That's it,
yeah.
And that's what I'm sticking with.
Yeah, but you never ever hear either Kung Lao or was it Liu Kang ever with their pre-quotes, like yes, you'll never defeat, the number one pupil of the White Lotus Society or some shit. Like you never hear them say it like the others. That's what I was kind of wondering. Because even Kano and Cabal bring up the Black Dragon all the time, like, oh yeah, I'm the strongest in the Black Dragon and all that kind of crap. But like, I don't know. I haven't heard that expression in a while. Like, that's what I was wondering if I got retcon or not.
Yeah. Oh, but with the characters and things, they're Chinese characters. I'm pretty sure I could. Yeah, I did write because I learned Japanese. I started learning it the old-fashioned way. And even with the characters, to learn most of the characters, you have to just keep writing them and writing them and writing them and memorize them as you write them. But I actually legit suck at that now. And I have a hard time recalling to write. But some of the characters, if I were to see a character, I might not remember what it means. But I could probably figure out the writing direction to rewrite it. Because that is still in my memory. How the like you always start like top to bottom or left to right, something like that.
Yeah, like for example, like whenever JoJo does something, there's always all these kanji flying around. Like I'm wondering if you know what they are without having to read the subtitles or.
Oh, I doubt it because it'll probably just be over my head. I'll be like, I've seen that before, but I don't remember what it is.
This was killing me, man, because the other day I was playing Super Fire Pro Wrestling Special for Super Famicom, Super Nintendo.
Oh, I found out that's only like 15. After you told me, I looked up the name. I think it's only $15 on eBay. I might get it one of these days.
It's.
I found my Super Famicom. It's in the box that's right by my door in my room.
But the thing is, that was the first wrestling game ever to have a story mode, not just like a tournament or career, but that was the first wrestling game to ever have an actual story mode with cutscenes and a plot and tons of scripted dialogue. And every single letter in that game, from the menus to the cutscenes, is in Japanese with the those letters they use,
Yeah.
It's like draw a picture of your house and this means cat. Whatever the fuck they do over there. Not to be anything. I'm just saying I can't understand how this translates to this. I don't know. But so I played this 8-hour story mode or whatever, like 4 hour story mode of this game. And I don't know what the hell happened except for what I watched on YouTube explaining it. It was driving me nuts. This is just, I'm constantly skipping past dialogue I can't read, and there's so much of it. And
yeah, I could probably figure out maybe a little bit. Like I said, I might like read part of it. Like maybe I can get like maybe part of the sentence, but maybe the first part of the sentence. Don't remember that kanji. Let me see, how many strokes is it? That's a 5-stroke kanji. Okay, let's look up 5-stroke kanjis. Okay, blah 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 blah. Oh, that's what that means. Okay, something
cool
like that.
Looking, but it's crazy. I can't understand how it translates. But yeah, the only one of the Super Famicom Fire Pros that got translated and released, through certain means was Super Fire Pro Wrestling X, Premium X. That one has a translated cart, but everything else is in Japanese. I still play them, but oh man, it's hard.
I gotta say, there was a Dragon Ball Z RPG game, and it was all, a lot of text and stuff. And the funny thing is, we didn't have Dragon Ball Z yet in Mexico. It was coming soon, but not at that time when we got that game. Like at first, we got the game from, I think, it was a store called Japan Video Games. I don't think they sell games anymore. They sell like toys and other things, but not games, So you'll buy Super Famicom games from them. And at first, I thought it was a fighting game. So we saw it was an RPG. We were disappointed. But whatever, we just gave it a shot. But the hard thing is kind of like sort of like a trivia type game. So number one, it's all in Japanese. And number two, you haven't seen Dragon Ball Z yet. So I'm assuming most of the things are kind of like, if you know the show, you know what events took place, but it's all Japanese. So I had to just trial and error, reset the game. I had a little notebook type thing. So I'm like, okay, this was A, that was wrong. Okay, so this one's B. Okay, this was right. Okay. Oh, that was wrong. Wait, that was X. I had to do that for the whole game because,
things you used to have to do with no internet, man.
Then no internet back then, or at least not. I mean, I'm sure it was, but not to the point that it is now. That almost everybody has it or whatever. But yeah, I don't really know Japanese at all, to be honest. I can't even pretend to fake it. But with Dragon Ball, though, I've seen it so many times. I can kind of sort of recognize, like when I see like Piccolo and Kuririn and Son Goku, Son Gohan, I kind of sort of recognize the symbols. So when I see those, I know you're talking about Krillin. And like, I don't know what all this gibberish means, but Krillin's name is in there somewhere. So something about him, I think. You know what I mean?
When it comes to the names of most of those characters, a lot of the characters have katakana for their names.
Yeah.
So like Krillin, Bulma, I forgot how Chi-Chi was written. Yeah. But it's easy. It's the easy Japanese for her name too. Goku's an exception.
Goku, Gohan, and Goten, and
only the son part
Yeah.
But yeah, from what I remember, I mean, off the top of my head, now I'm kind of curious because I don't remember too well.
Yeah.
Bring it
I got
back.
to bring it back on.
Yeah, bringing it back a little bit. I was going to say, in addition to characters, some of the other stuff that was memorable about Mortal Kombat 2 was some of the additions. Some of the things, certain things were meant to be included in the first game, but they didn't have time, so they made up for it with Mortal Kombat 2. And, there was a lot of cool things between types of stages, and not just having everybody having 2 fatalities, but then also you had the friendship and things like that. I mean, let's talk about some of those kind of things. That was something that made it a much bigger, deeper game than the original one.
Yeah, because not only did they had 2 fatalities now, they also had a fatality and a friendship. And I think both of those were like, you had to fight the entire match without throwing a punch, like just kicks and blocks or whatever. So you could do them when it was time to do the fatalities. But the thing that kind of bugged me, which I think they kind of went overboard, was that in Mortal Kombat 1, when you fight in the pit, it's as easy as crouching and punching and they fall. But now you have to do inputs for that too. They had a second version of the pit that now has kind of a cutscene of the character actually falling to his death and everything. They had, I think it was called the crypt. I forgot what that one was called, but there's spikes on the roof and you could uppercut the guy to get into
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And there was the Deadpool, which is memorable because most of the times whenever you start the game, the Deadpool is always the first stage. I think the Deadpool was a bit easier. I think that was just hold block and down and low punch, low kick at the same time, which again is stupid, but that was the one. But the other ones, yeah, the Deadpool was the same motion for everyone, I believe, but the fucking crypt and the other one, the pit, had a different motion for every character.
Yeah.
Fuck. What really? Why?
For me, that was like indicative of a lot of things with the game. Like the way I feel about the game overall is essentially that they had a ton of great ideas, but some of the ideas were maybe even a little bit overcooked rather than undercooked. Like they put too much thought into them. Like, okay, having 2 fatalities, that's neat. Having to, do like these insane 12-step combinations just to do one of them was too much. So that's like I said before, is with the more recent stuff, they've taken some of those same ideas that they had from the beginning and streamlined them, shaved it down to something a lot more manageable and therefore fun for me. But yeah, I still think that those ideas were great. I just think that, and I'm sure Panda will agree with me on this, that there were a lot of great additions that maybe weren't executed as well as they could have been, whether it be those extra fatalities, whether it be the stage fatalities. But you can't deny they did work hard to make it a sequel, a good sequel in the sense that it expanded on the first game instead of just including more of the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I do agree
This
with.
game,
They did way more expansion with the story and the lore. They tried to make like a much more solid fight system. Like you said, yeah, the fatalities and, the pit fatalities were a bit more complicated than usual. I mean, we always had that one kid. There was always that one guy when once it said finish him, they're pulling out the EGM. They're like, all right, I'm going to kill your ass. Let's see. Up, down, down.
Up, time up.
It's too late.
Time up. No mercy.
But, they really did try hard to, kind of not reinvent the wheel, but just kind of retorque it a little and, make it a little bit better than it was the first time. Because don't get me wrong, yeah, Mortal Kombat 2 is kind of rough, but in comparison to part 1, it's way smoother. Way smoother as far as inputs.
I do also
looking back at... Oh, sorry.
Just want to add real quick that I like that it was like a real sequel. It wasn't super duper Mortal Kombat or, well, that came later, right? But at least then it was not super duper Mortal Kombat or Mortal Kombat Turbo or Mortal Kombat, not the same game, but now you can pick Goro and Shang Tsung too, that bullshit. And this was like a legit brand new game, brand new stages, brand new music, storyline progresses. Even the old characters had new looks and new outfits. It was just completely new from the ground up. And that was what made it more exciting than Super Street Fighter. That was the same game with 4 guys. It was epic, man. I mean, and the graphics were better. I think the digitized stuff was a lot cleaner looking in the sequel because they got the hang of it more in this one, you know?
Yeah, with the
Yeah,
first
that's
game.
clear.
Oh, sorry.
I was just
Oh,
going to say, this, like, even at that point, to carry on with what you were saying about why it was such a good thing, even at that point, it had already become kind of a meme with Street Fighter II, that it was like, you know, these sequels were not real. They were more spin-offs or expansion packs. I mean, the first, like, 3 or 4 games to come out after Street Fighter II, let's be honest, nowadays they would be DLC. They wouldn't be games you'd have to pay $60 for or whatever, or that it just didn't feel satisfying in a way. They were still fun, but it was like, even the magazines were like, come on already with this. You know, what next? Super Duper, Street Fighter, Turbo, Speedy Gonzalez Arriba. Like, you know, what, oh, now you has a yellow belt. I mean, like, whatever, you know. But whereas Mortal Kombat, I guarantee you, the crew was watching what was going on culturally in that space at that time with regard to fighting games, and they were aware of the jokes and the memes about Street Fighter II. Like, they were probably making those same jokes themselves. So when they made Mortal Kombat 2, I guarantee you, there was a very sincere and aware approach to, you know what, let's not do what they're doing because they're making money, but they're also getting kind of shit on. So let's do right out of the no Super Mortal Kombat, no Ultra Mortal Kombat, no Mortal Kombat Driver's Ed Edition, none of that. Just Mortal Kombat 2. And it's a different game. How about that? Like, can we just do that? And there was definitely an appreciation of that, of the audience. I can say that. There were people who were like, oh, wow. They're not jacking us around like those guys over at Capcom are with their, you know, Street Fighter after school special edition, whatever. You know, you're right, man. That was a huge deal. Like, the fact that Mortal Kombat 2 was just Mortal Kombat 2, and that's all they wanted, and that's all they needed, and that's what they got. So that's actually, it seems like, why would you even celebrate that? But hey, you know, you remember what it was like back then.
The funny thing is that it cost them in the long run for the Capcom, because at the time, like you said, the magazines were bringing it up too. You know, it's like, okay, you just played $60. I paid $60 for the World Warrior, and then Champion Edition was in the arcades. You pay $60 for Champion Edition, Turbo's out, and etc. And one of the reasons that Super Street Fighter 2 for Super Nintendo, like, it didn't make as many sales was because by now everyone got savvy, I guess, and it's like, okay, let's wait a couple of months until Super Turbo comes out. We'll buy that one instead, except that one never came out. That came out, I think, for the 3DO or something, you know, but it did still kill Capcom, because by that time, third game out, everyone's like, I'm not going to spend $60 on the same game 3 times and whatever. So yeah, Mortal Kombat, they really changed it. And of course, the biggest thing was that the SNES version had the blood.
But then, ironically, though, and sadly, to us, in a sense, we mentioned a little bit when we did the first MK podcast about how it was right around between the third and fourth game where the series started to kind of shake a little bit and lose its way. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that with the third game, they did start falling into the same trap, because you had MK3, and then you had Ultimate, and then you had Gold and Trilogy, and then that started to confuse the marketplace the exact same way that Capcom did with Street Fighter. And that's where, even before MK4 came out, which everybody kind of blames for messing things up a little bit, but even right before 4, you started to see that they were kind of falling into the same thing. And you got to wonder, it was like night and day from 2, because 2 was like a straight sequel, no bullshit. And then with 3, now they're kind of getting into the bullshit. And it definitely, I would say, had an effect. And so it's weird. They started off on the right foot, just do a straight sequel, no fuss, no muss, no DLC packs. And then with the next game, it was like, maybe we can jerk them around a little bit because we know they'll pay for it. It was just weird, you know? It was a weird shift of priority. And I think that's ultimately something that hurt them a little bit in the long run. But they're doing fine now, thankfully. But yeah, it's the kind of thing you can't help but notice when you look back on it with the heightened awareness that you have today.
Yeah. I'll be back in a second, but I'll leave you guys to talk about the also delightful gameplay and what you all thought about it. I'll be back in a bit.
Oi, 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 oi. The AI, in my opinion, was a bit on the brutal side. I would say it was, I'm sorry, the AI was terrible. Honestly, they were pulling off the move so fast, and I'm like, wait a minute, I just tried that. Wait, I have to hold this button for this amount of time, but they do things instantly. It's sometimes when you try to jump and do a kick, they get to you first. I mean, it was such a difficult game. So arcade could never get anywhere, and home was even worse. Well, not as bad because hey, I'm at home. I don't have to worry about quarters, you know. But that AI,
Panda, you're pretty good with these. You're pretty good with these games, Panda. What would you think? Would you agree with that? Because I know I got my opinion, but I mean, it's what she's saying rings true to me in a lot of ways about this game.
They did up the ante a good bit on the difficulty as far as the AI went. It did feel, I guess, a bit more hurried. So like where you would have characters where you would have to hit like back, forth, then throw something or have to charge it. It's like,
yes.
It's like, oh, you got to charge that? Fuck your 2 seconds. Boom, I'm just going to throw it out there and spam it.
Yeah.
That's the part that made it so bad, was spamming, which I later learned a trick to kind of counter that, but it kind of worked, kind of didn't. But yeah, the AI did seem a bit more aware of your tactics, and it was not going to treat you nicely on that game.
I have a question for any of you. Okay, in my opinion, the easiest character to fight in that game was Shao Kahn. Please tell me I'm not the only one who felt that way.
Well, for me, one of the things I noticed with the game, and I mentioned this about some of the fights in Tournament Fighters as well, there was sometimes the sense that you'd win because the game lets you, not because you necessarily did anything right. And I have beaten it. Like I said, I'm not good at it at all. I played it for a little bit recently to get ready for the podcast. I'm not good at the game. I have beaten it in the past on Super Nintendo a couple times. Mm-hmm. But there were things I noticed, like there were times when Khan was very easy and times where he was impossible, but it never felt consistent at all. And that always bothered me because it felt like if the game didn't want me to win, I wouldn't win. And if it didn't care, then I would win. And it's just, it kind of robbed the achievement feeling from it, because if you beat him, but he's barely attacking, or he's only doing the one easily avoidable or counterable attack over and over and over again, it kind of feels like the game is just throwing you a pity fuck. And okay, well, I won, and then I can move on with my life. But, compared to, the last 87 times I tried, he just murdered me in 8 seconds, it just feels weird. Very inconsistent. But yeah, I can definitely agree that there were times when he was incredibly easy to beat. I didn't count.
It really did feel that way to me. He seemed like sometimes he had his openings were easier to counter, in my opinion, compared to Kentaro, in my opinion. Because with Kentaro, the only thing I can do with Kentaro, regardless of whatever character I chose to play with, was like, he jumped, I kick, up, kick, up, kick. That was the only way I could do it.
I like honestly, with Kentaro for me. Character related, like, when I would use Kung Lao or somebody, I would be able to beat him no problem. Like, he'd be more open, dodging less stuff and attacking less. Now, if I use Liu Kang, on the other hand, it went from turning to Mortal Kombat II to Killer Instinct as far as Shao Kahn went, because he would just go in the corner and just combo the hell out of me. It was just hammer, shoulder, hammer, shoulder, hammer, shoulder. Just, well, I guess literal arm and hammer at this point until I died. Like, it was ridiculous. But if I used another character like Kung Lao or Baraka, he's just like, okay, buddy, I'll just let you trip me up. Ha ha, that was fun. Let's do it again. Oh, you win. Oh, you bozo twat.
Do you think Shao Kahn's play type or his program was based on the character that you chose? And he's reacting to, and the AI is just reacting to that?
That's what I was just bringing up. I'm not sure, but it really starts to feel that way.
It very well could have been. I mean, there were games already being programmed where they had those kind of things. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but yeah, there were definitely inconsistencies in AI programs in games back then. Depending on who you played as, the AI would be either more or less difficult. So yeah, it's not altogether implausible. Giant, did you have problems with Shao Kahn, or was he one of the easier ones for you?
Oh, I don't know. In terms of the characters, I know how I guess play the game. It's just basically Sub-Zero and Scorpion,
Right.
pretty much. But yeah, the game Mortal Kombat. I mean, Mortal Kombat have always had that kind of gameplay, but especially Mortal Kombat 2, it did feel a little bit more like you have to pretty much attack your opponent real quick. You have to do certain juggle combos or certain cheats. Just cheat your way to the top, pretty much. Cheat, so that you're able to win that match. Because another thing that these games do is that any punch or kick or anything they do takes off a lot of damage.
Oh yeah.
About doing the specials or whatever, it's like in a matter of seconds, you're already losing the match. So it's like, yeah, you have to do a lot of quick thinking in order to win these matches. Like, it's crazy.
I found the game to be really ruthless when I played it again. It was legitimately the first time I played the game on Super Nintendo, and I'm looking forward to hearing, from the perspective of somebody who maybe played the arcade version a lot more than I did. But I played the Super Nintendo one for the first time in many, many years, and I found it to be ruthless, very ruthless, just unrelenting, constant attacks. This is what I mean. When I said it was a flawed game, I mean, there's some things about it that just kind of like, okay, for one thing, I got to be honest. We did the Tournament Fighters podcast last time, and so I played the game for several days before and after that to be really ready for it. Going from that game to this game, keeping in mind the Tournament Fighters and Mortal Kombat 2 were both released in the same year. Like, wow. Okay, so I have to say that people can fight me on this, but I don't really care. Tournament Fighters for Super Nintendo actually is a much, much better playing game than Mortal Kombat 2 for Super Nintendo. Comparatively, Mortal Kombat 2 is very clunky and slow and unresponsive compared to Tournament Fighters. And I think a lot of that had to do with Tournament Fighters being built for the SNES and not being a dumbed-down port. But still, like, I had problems getting the control inputs to work and react with Mortal Kombat 2, whereas I didn't have any of that problem with Tournament Fighters. Like, Sub-Zero's Ice Ball and Leo's Shining Cutter is the same motion, quarter circle punch. And, I got it to work more than 99 times out of 100 with Leo, but with Sub-Zero, it was like totally, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. That was one thing that was killing me. But yeah, the AI being so relentless certainly didn't help, because they're on you. As soon as it says fight, they're just murdering you immediately. A lot of the attacks are overpowered. A throw can take off almost a quarter of your health bar right away. The punches, like if they just decided to give you that boop, 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 high punch combo, like you just had to stand there and take it if you didn't block the first one. So like somebody would do that to you 3 times and you'd be mulch. It got to a point where what worked for me to consistently counter all these problems is to just jump kick, leg sweep, because that leg sweep is overpowered as fuck too. If you can get somebody in a loop where you can just leg sweep them over and over again in the corner, you can win in 8 seconds, no matter who it is. It's ridiculous. Now, they don't always fall for it, but when they do, you're just sitting there like, broken, this game's broken. Like, even if you're winning, it's like, wow, this just, it's a little underbaked. I guess for all the cool ideas the game has, and I'm not trying to slam the game or anything, but again, I just played Tournament Fighters a week ago, and these games came out the same year, so it's just something you notice. If you go from that game to this game, and you remember it's the same time, you're frustrated. You're like, wow, why doesn't this game play as smooth as this one? Why doesn't it respond as well as this one? Why is this game so unbalanced compared to this one? You know, I got 90% of the way through the arcade tree just spamming the leg sweep thing. If I didn't do that, I took damage. But if I did the leg sweep 50 times, I didn't get hit once. It was like, okay, so I could be cheap, or it could just be a coin toss whether I win or not. It's just, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not trying to knock the game, but we're talking about the AI programming. We're talking about it not being so good. And based on that, I just have to be honest. You know, these were things I noticed immediately within a minute of play in the game.
Well, one reason, especially Mortal Kombat 1 and Mortal Kombat 2, especially, I guess Mortal Kombat 2 a little bit more in certain aspects, is that it's true what you're saying, because I find that the control isn't very like crisp and responsive at the moment, because when you're trying to do a fatality, I don't know, the ones that you have to jump a lot or press up or walk back forward, whatever the combination it is to do that fatality, it's like it acts so slow. It's like you're pushing the up button and the character reacts like 2 seconds later to do that. It's like, shouldn't it be doing that right away?
Lag to it, yeah.
It fucks it up to do the fatality because they give you such a short amount of time to do it that by the time you try to do it, time's up.
A Panda,
I don't know. The fatality thing, I think that is one complaint that I'm pretty sure a lot of people have, that it's really not responsive when it's time to do the fatalities.
Panda, I'm assuming you played the arcade game more. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that, Johnny. But it was Panda. I was gonna say, I think Panda probably played the arcade version more often than I have. Or can you relate some of that stuff?
Yeah, like for some reason, you know what? This is probably the best way to put it. And I think it goes right back to what you were saying with Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighter. Yeah, sure. Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighter is a good game because it was catered to the Super NES. Like, that's the same way, you know, the Genesis version might play a little bit different, but it was catered to the Genesis. This is a port over of an arcade, you know, so it's kind of hard to, you know, just kind of bend that down to its whim as far as like controls and things of that nature. So yeah, sometimes you're going to have issues where, you know, it's going to lag out. Things are not going to feel like 100% as comfortable as they would, like, say, in the arcade. And again, like we were saying with the AI, like 1 minute, you know, the AI might be cool with you, you know, the next game, the AI is just, you know, just literally murdering you. So yeah, I do believe that there's some definite programming going on there that just need to be more tweaked and fine-tuned, and everything would be better. Actually, I remember a old peripheral device I saw in GamePro a long time back, to where it was actually a controller, and on the top of it was like a small LED, and there was like a wheel around the buttons around the regular buttons, to where you could program the actual fatalities into these buttons. So like once you were done, you just, you know, when they said finish him, you just, you know, hit the top button or whatever position he was in, it would set up, you know, that particular fatality. So like if you had Sub-Zero's fatality in there, all you had to do was get into whatever position it was for him to do the fatality, push the button, and that was it.
Wait, that wasn't like a secret code or nothing to do that? 'Cause I've heard of those one finger fatality thing, one button fatalities, but I always thought it was like a code you had to input to set something like that up.
Like there were actual one button fatalities in the game, but you like had to hold it for like a whole round or something like that.
That's what it was.
I was gonna say the AI was super cheap. They always low sweep you first before you can low sweep them. They throw you first before you can throw them. I think that game actually did the whole read your inputs the way the SNK games do sometimes. And I always notice whenever I'm doing the Fatal Fury moves, whenever I fuck up the move, that's when the guy jumps at me and attacks me. Whenever I actually fucking do it right, they stay the fuck away. They're reading my damn inputs. And that's how Mortal Kombat plays, especially fucking Liu Kang with this, because in this game he has a air fireball, a high fireball, low fireball. That's a shit of fireball. So you can't even jump because every time you jump, he'll insta jump and shoot a fireball at you from the air. And,
it'll actually cut frame data to get for it to do that.
I hated that shit. Yeah. And the thing is, like, to play the game, the only way to beat it, I remember, or not the only way, one of the cheesiest way, was just to spam Liu Kang's low fireball, because most of the times he would fall for it, or you could at least kill him with chip damage or whatever. And what I would usually do sometimes, if I just want to just beat the game, just to beat the stupid game, is I'll pick whoever I want to pick for the first, 2 or 3 guys. And then when it starts getting to the point that, fuck it, I'll just choose Liu Kang and go through the rest of the campaign, But yeah.
I lost it for a second. I had it and I lost it. I hate when that happens.
Like Medina could also, if I could get the timing right for the teleport roll attack, I could cheese that too. But the thing is, if they block the teleport, then you're fucked, basically.
I remember
Uppercut.
it felt like certain things they kind of overcorrected from the first game. For example, Sub-Zero, okay, we talked about it in the first game. He's notoriously easy for new players because it's easy to just do the freeze uppercut, and you can kind of do that whether you're just trying to learn the game or you just want to be cheesy. In the first Mortal Kombat, that was a very beginner-friendly thing. They really nerfed that stuff a lot for Mortal Kombat 2 because I think they slowed down the ice ball so it takes longer to travel. They can block it, and they avoid it very easily. So it's like, I'll actually say, I think I actually hit them with the ice ball twice when I played it yesterday.
Yeah,
Every
they
other
fucking
time
always block it.
they jumped it or blocked it super easy. So it's like they made him almost a useless character. Like the stuff you would want to do as him doesn't really work that well. So, and again, that's like a correction of sorts from the first game where it was a little too cheesy, but like they overcorrected and now he's useless.
And then Sub-Zero can also now freeze the floor, so when the characters are busy, like,
I like that.
Down back,
but they
down
fucking
back,
stay away.
down
The
back
computer
block,
always
down
fucking
back
stays
block.
away when you do it,
No.
so,
Wait, it was the down back kick or was it down back? I forgot. It was
It
down
was
back.
down back
something.
kick or something. It was the reverse, like
Yeah,
the
down back
regular thing was a
stuff.
quarter circle with a punch, so backwards quarter circle with the kick was freezing the ground.
Right.
And everything. But the computer would always know to stay the fuck away. So I'm like, well, dude, what the fuck? You know what I
It's
mean?
like they only
how-
fell for that shit by accident.
Yeah.
Very aggravating. So yeah, this was my thing was that we all agree the AI was pretty aggressive and cheap. One of the cheapest I've ever seen. Definitely the game's got a lot of balancing issues. But I would say Panda, I'm assuming you probably played it the most in the arcade. Did it really play a lot better in the arcade or just a little bit? Because I would have very little frame of reference. But I'm assuming that at least some of these problems were not as prominent on the arcade version as they were on the console versions.
Actually, it did play a lot better in the arcades. The control was a lot smoother. Let me think. The AI, believe it or not, was actually pretty fair in the arcade version.
No, wow.
But yeah, as far as the controls and everything, it didn't lag. It didn't feel like, it actually felt like you were playing using a character rather than like you were trying to drive a tank. So
This
yeah,
is for the thumbnail, guys.
it felt way more accurate and way more responsive than than any of the home console versions ever did.
But to be fair, that's generally the case anyway with most arcade versions, because it was made for the arcade. And then, they have to, nerf things when they put them to the home console, even though Mortal Kombat 2 wasn't one of those consoles that were games that were nerfed being brought to a home console because the AI was cheap and evil.
One of the things that happened to me when I was playing, I was going through the arcade tree and just trying to learn the controls again on the easiest setting and all that. And I got the Scorpion. And again, this was on the easiest setting. He
This is
immediately,
what Mortal Kombat's all about, basically.
as soon
What
as
are the tokens?
Quarters.
he just threw me 5 times and I lost in 8 seconds. Like that was it.
Yeah,
He gave me
those take a lot of damage.
This was the easiest setting too. It's just he said fight, he threw me, I got up, he threw me again. I had no chance. He just threw me 5 times and that was the end of the fight. Like, you son of a bitch. And it was on the easiest setting too. So I would be shocked if the arcade version wasn't a little bit more balanced because, again, not to knock it or trash it or whatever, just to be real or whatever, you know, I thought that when I played the SNES one again recently for the first time in many years, I found it to be, you know, a fun thing to mess with, but ultimately pretty broken. But I do want to ask, because one of the big things with this game, the magazines went nuts with it too, is that this game it was ported to everything. It was on the Super Nintendo. It was on the Genesis. It was on the Game Boy. It was on the Game Gear. It was even on the Sega Master System, if you can believe that, in 1993.
Oh,
And that thing had been obsolete since 89, technically, but you still had some games coming out for it by that point. So yeah,